time with the enthusiastic tutor, and in today's tutorial it's going to be a continuation of the course Eng331, and today happens to be the last tutorial of the course, and thereafter it's going to be revision, practice questions and the likes. So with this being said, let's hop straight into it. Okay, so we have Eng331, Introduction to Semantics, and this is what we've been talking about for over 5 days now. Now we're going to be talking about contradiction. I want to talk about contradiction. Now, it is said to be the expression present to opposing the proposition at the same time. Okay, I think I need to switch this off. Just a moment. All right, good now. Now, when there's an expression of two opposing the expression of two opposing expression of two opposing words, proposition. Contradiction is said to be when there is an expression of two opposing proposition. All right. Now, what do we mean? Now, let's take, for example, a person cannot be dead and at the same time be alive. It's not possible. When somebody is making a statement, and in that same statement, there are two opposing propositions, then this is said to be contradiction. Now, let's take, for example, we have the circular house is rectangular. Now, let's also take, for example, the drains are flooded because there are no rains. The drains are flooded because there are no rains. Okay, you can imagine the circular house is triangle. Now, let me take another marker. Now, circular triangle. We have flooded and no rain. How possible is that? The circular house is rectangular. That's not possible. Okay, so these are the two propositions that are opposing. When you have opposing propositions in a or in an expression, they will refer to it as contradiction. All right, now let's proceed. There's something called analyticity. Analyticity Now, when we talk about analyticity, here is said to be when we have sentences in grammatical forms and lexical meaning of their propositions. Analyticity. Okay, when we speak of sentences, in grammatical forms and lexical meaning of their prepositions, which make them necessarily true. Now, let's take an example of this. Sentences in the grammatical form and in the grammatical forms and lexical meaning. Forms and lexical, in the grammatical forms and lexical meaning of their preposition. Prepositions. Now, churches are usually attended by Christians. Churches are usually attended by Christians. We have mosques are usually attended by Muslims. Now, we talk about analyticity when we have sentences in the grammatical forms and the lexical meaning of their prepositions, which makes them necessarily true. And we have examples of makes them true. Then we have churches are usually attended by Christians. Definitely, Christians attend churches, not Muslims. And Muslims usually attend, the mosques are usually attended by Muslims. Same thing there. So we have that as that. Now let's proceed. We have something, or we're going to talk about something called pragmatics. Okay, pragmatics. Now, someone gave a definition of what pragmatic is in 1986, and this person is no other person than Kepson. Kepson okay, there's an M. We have in 1986. Now, he said, pragmatic is the study of the general principles, the study of the general principles necessary for retrieving information from a specific Alltrans based on texts. Now, let's take this down. We have the study of general principles. Study general principles. All right. Necessary. The study of general principle when it is necessary to retrieve information. When it is necessary to receive information, when it is necessary to retrieve, I beg your pardon, not receive, to retrieve. When it becomes necessary, when it is necessary, when it becomes imperative, when it is highly of essence to retrieve information from a specific Alltrans spoken word utterance based on the context, based on the meaning. When it is necessary to retrieve information, right, from a specific utterance, from a specific utterance, based on the meaning, based on the meaning. All right. So we have that as that definition for pragmatics in the year 1986. All right. And he says it is the study of the general principles, the general principles of when it is necessary to retrieve information from a specific utterance based on its context, based on its meaning, based on the meaning, context, and we have that as that. Now let's proceed. All right. Awesome. Now we have the meaning. Trying to adjust them very quickly. Great. Now let's proceed. That is all that under pragmatic. Now you should know that while semantic is concerned with language meaning, I think we should have that written down. Now, we should know that semantics is concerned with the language meaning, pragmatic is concerned with language use. Okay? Semantic is concerned with language meaning. Pragmatic with language use. Okay, so we have that as that. Now let's proceed. Now, success in communication depends on how well the meaning, intended by the speaker and how the implicature of the listener converge. So now it's on the two-way thing. Depends on how well the meaning intended by the speaker and the implicature of the listener converge. Now, when we say implicature, what are we talking about? Implicature. All right. Implicature here is said to be a term coined by H.P. Greece and is referred to as what is suggested in an Alltrans. What is suggested in an utterance and which may not be even expressed. Now let's take that down. Term coined by H.P. Greece, term coined by H.P. Greece, and it refers to what is suggested in an utterance. What is suggested in an utterance and which may not have been expressed. Not have been expressed. That is what we call implicature. What is suggested in an utterance, in the spoken word, which may not have been expressed. Okay, that is according to H.P. Greece. Now, there's something also called speech acts. Speech acts. Now, according to Austin in 1962, now speech act said to be an approach that explains the rules of utterances in shaping the attitude of a participant in interpersonal communication. Now, basically, speech act has to do with interpersonal communication, and it basically explains the role of utterance, the role of spoken word in shaping, in coining, in developing, in bringing out the attitude of participant, the attitude of parties in interpersonal communication. Now, let's take this down. Explains the roles of utterances. Explains the roles of utterances in what? In forming the attitude of parties in, or participants, however you want it, in interpersonal communication. All right, in interpersonal communication. So we have that as that. So let's proceed. Now, speech acts reveal the intentions of the speaker. Speech act reveals the intention of the speaker and the effects the speaker's utterance and expression on the hearer. As another look to it, it reveals the intention of the speaker. Reveal the intentions of the speaker. It reveals the intentions of the speaker, and not just the speaker's intentions or the intentions of the speaker. It also reveals the effects. It also reveals the effect the speaker's utterance. Effect of the speaker utterance. The effect, the spoken word, the word that comes out of the mouth of the speaker, the effect it has, the effect of the spoken word, and the expressions on the what? Have on the hearers. Have on the hearers. Have on the hearers. We have that as speech acts. Okay. Now, the bottom line of it all is that speech act, the conclusion of the whole matter about speech acts is that every utterance, every spoken word has a purpose which derives from the specific context. So we have utterance, purpose, context. Speaking of speech acts, we have utterance, we have purpose, we have contexts. Meaning that every spoken word has a purpose, and that purpose is found in the context at which the spoken word is used, in the meaning. I said this, we can use it, the synonyms of this context is meaning. Context as it is being used, meaning. So that is basically all about speech acts. Now let's proceed. Now let's talk about fallacies. Before we proceed, now I believe we all understand what we have here. We have semantic, we have pragmatic, we have implicator, we have speech acts. And I said semantic concerned with the meaning, the language meaning. Semantic is concerned with language meaning. Pragmatic is concerned with language use. Okay, and we have implicator, which is a word coined out, which is a word coined, orchestrated by P.H. Greece. Greece is Grice, and it suggests in an utterance. Implicator suggests in an utterance what it suggests in an utterance which may not have been expressed. And that's what implicator is talking about. And here we have speech act, and Austin in 1962. Okay, I stabilized now. Now let's continue. So as I was saying, now the speech act explains the roles of utterances in forming the attitude of parties in interpersonal communication. And it also reveals the intention of the speaker. Speech act reveals the intention of the speaker. Okay, effect the speaker's utterance and expression have on the hearers. All right, let's proceed. So we have that as that. So I'm going to wipe this off so we can okay, let's proceed. Now we have fallacies. Fallacies. Okay, the misuse or misunderstanding of language. The misuse or misunderstanding of language is what we refer to fallacy, anything that misleads, misuse. Now let's first talk about equivocation. Under this, we want to talk about equivocation. Equivocation is said to be when there is a double talk or equal voice. Aqueous vos in Latin. Aqueous vos in Latin. Equivocation. Right? Double talk or equal voice. When we have double talk or equal voice. All right, and it is said to be aqueous in Latin. Now, double voice or double or equal voice used to describe the post now. Used as same in terms for different sense. In term for different sense in the same discourse. Now let me explain this. Equivocation is said to be when we have double talk or equal voice to describe the possibility of using the same term for different sense in the same discourse. Same term as same term used as same term for different sense in the same discourse. Same different sense in the same discourse. Now let's take for example. Rich men enjoy rich meals. Okay, rich men enjoys rich meals. Okay, so we have that as that double talk or double voice. All right, same term but in different sense in the same discourse. Rich man, rich meal, different sense but in the same discourse. All right, we also have the fallacy of composition. Now, fallacy of composition has to do with when you apply the, now this fallacy is derived from the assumption that what applies to a part of an element applies to the totality of that element. Assumption of what applies to a part, to the part, to the part. I was actually right at first. Applies to a part of an element applies to the totality of the elements. To the totality of that element. That is the fallacy of composition. That what applies to one part of an element applies to the totality of that element. That is what we call fallacy of composition. Now, let's take for example, since a player in the team is skillful, the entire team should be harmonious and visionary. That is not true. That's a fallacy. Because you have a very wonderful forward doesn't mean you have a wonderful backward, a defender. So that is what we have under fallacy of composition. And I think that will be all on this course this evening, and that will be all on the course for our classes. And the next thing we are doing should be revisions. Okay, so for those of us in the private class, there's nothing to worry about. We will have our Telegram classes, and we'll definitely cover on some things we do not cover on the live stream. So let's do well to submit our notes. And just before we call it a wrap for today, I'd like to quickly give us an assignment. It's weekend, we're not class until Monday again. So let's take home these assignments. List 10 examples of contradictory expression. Okay, so thank you very much, everyone, and I look forward to seeing you in subsequent tutorial. Bye.